Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it is great to have you back. If you're a new listener, we hope you like what you hear and we're glad you joined us. Our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. We talk a lot about controlling our emotions, making fact based, left brain logical decisions, and trying to make the world a better place by showing leadership through interactions with other people. So, in today's episode, we're going to give you 5 tips to help you stop caring what others think, specifically about you. So, it's important to note, though, you don't want to disregard all feedback because we just recently did an episode on how to filter negative feedback and understand which of that negative feedback is useful for you to listen to because it can help you improve in areas where you need to improve. There's a lot of noise out there you don't really need to listen to. And I think we all get caught up in caring what other people think or worried about being judged or looking stupid. And that type of thought process can really hold you back from pursuing the things that are important to you in your life. So, a lot of that is really instinctual when you think about it because we've evolved from kind of a tribal group that had to fight for survival and have become much more domesticated. And we've got mostly first world problems now, at least where we live. They're first world problems. So when you go back and look at our episode around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very basic needs have to be satisfied before you can worry about anything else. And those basic needs are like food, water, safety, shelter, like the very most basic needs. And all of those survival instincts are still hardwired in us. It was a lot safer to be in a group or a tribe or a clan or whatever terminology you want to use back in the day. So it's normal to want to be accepted and want to be a part of a group. It's like survival instinct deep in your brain. So that's normal. With all of that said, that doesn't apply the same way today as it used to. And we spend a lot of time worrying what other people think about us, and that is really wasted energy. Because the reality is, people are going to think what they're going to think. You have a lot more control over your own actions and demonstrating, if it's important to you, demonstrating to the outside world how you think and what's important to you by the actions that you take. So it's really important to get past this fear of judgment, this fear of worrying what other people think about us, because it's a very limiting mindset and it's going to hold you back from pursuing the things that you want to pursue. So, with all that said, let's jump into our 5 tips. We've got actionable things here. It's not just pontificating about problems or issues and then saying, yeah, there you go figure it out on your own. We want to give you concrete, actionable things that you can do to put these tips into your everyday life and build them into how you think so that you can process the world in a productive way and get over your fears and go after the things that you want to go after. So, the first one is you have to acknowledge what it is you're afraid of. Why are you afraid of being judged? You know, we talked about it being instinctual a little bit earlier, which is very true, but maybe it's not that. Maybe you're just worried about looking stupid. Maybe you think other people think you're dumb and you don't want to look dumb in front of other people. I can tell you personally, I've made a pretty good career out of looking dumb and asking dumb questions. It doesn't bother me a bit for people to go, man, shouldn't you know that? I was running a store one time and somebody asked me a question in the produce department. I don't know the answer to the question. I said, I'm not sure, but let me just go get the produce manager because he can answer your questions. And the person I was walking the store with said, man, shouldn't you know that? And I said, no, it's not my job at all to know every single thing about every single thing in this store. But it is my job to make sure that customers get their requests satisfied, to make sure that people leave here happy, to make sure we're providing good service. And I knew that the best person to do that for that customer was our produce manager. So I went and got that person, got him connected, and solved the problem. I don't care if they think I look dumb for not knowing the particular question that I got asked that day. It's a perfectly acceptable answer in most instances to say, I don't know, let me find out. Now, if you are a subject matter expert and you've spent 3 weeks preparing for something and someone asks you a pretty obvious question and you don't know the answer to that question, sure, you could look bad in that instance. It's something you probably should have prepared for and known before you went into that particular scenario. But in most instances, not a big deal. So one way to figure that out is what is it that I'm worried about? What am I afraid of? Why am I feeling this way? Or why do I care what other people think? Write it down. Write down particular moments where you felt judged. Maybe you were talking in a group and you mixed up your words and said something silly. Maybe you were playing in a sport that you were new in and things didn't go well for you and you made a silly boneheaded play and you looked bad. Whatever the case may be, what is it about that situation that made you feel judged or nervous or anxious or worried or however you felt? And then think about it. Where did that come from? Was that really what people thought, or was it just a silly moment and it's all gone now? And almost always you're going to wind up at B, this is a silly moment and it's over now, versus A, I've irreparably damaged my relationship and or my reputation forever. That just almost never happens. It's just not true. So you have to get to the bottom of your feeling. What is it about you that makes you think that way? And that will help you deal with it. So write it down and reflect on it. That is tip number one. Acknowledge it, write it down, reflect on it. Tip number two, reframe the narrative. This one's really important. And if you think about yourself, I think this will ring true with you too. Most people don't give a shit about you. They're worried about themselves. And we all think, because we're so self-absorbed and we're thinking about ourselves, we think other people are thinking about us as well. And it's not true. Think about a time you toe picked in public and tripped. How many people saw it? I one time was walking with my wife and my oldest son, and the sidewalk was uneven in downtown, and I took a digger. And as I went down, I let out this big yell because I wasn't expecting to trip. And my wife and my son were like, "What the hell are you doing?" There was a lot of people on the sidewalk. Nobody else noticed. Nobody else said a word. And I mean, it looked like something out of a Buster Keaton movie or a Chevy Chase pratfall back in the early days of Saturday Night Live. It was like something out of a movie. It was that exaggerated and that ridiculous of a fall that I took on the sidewalk in downtown. And nobody cared. Nobody cared at all. So we think that we're the center of the universe and we think everyone's paying attention to us. We don't. We're not. Not true. Think about all the other people in your life, and do you think about them that way? No, you don't. And if you do, that probably says something more about you than it does about them. And I would say that about anybody. If you're worried about other people judging you, maybe you're judgmental. Maybe that's why you think the way that you think, and you've got to change your thought process so that you're not judging other people. And that almost always comes from a place of self-doubt, low self-esteem, lack of confidence. We like to, shouldn't say like to, but it's natural for people to try to make themselves feel better by comparing themselves to people that are less than them in a particular category, particular subject, or particular attribute. And so when you realize that, the question we always like to, it's not even a question, what we like to say is 100 years from now, we'll all be dead. But ask yourself this question: will this matter in a week? Will it matter in a week? Without looking at your calendar, tell me what you did a week ago. So this episode is airing on a Thursday. What did you do last Thursday? I bet you can't tell me anything that you did last Thursday. And that's your life. You care about it more than anybody. I assure you, nobody cares. So you've got to reframe that in your head. When you have an instance where you feel stupid, you feel judged, you feel anxious, just ask yourself, is this going to matter in a week? Will it matter in a week? Another way to do it is, what's the worst that can happen? You know, now, like if you're taking a selfie in front of the Grand Canyon, the worst that can happen is falling into the Grand Canyon. So in that instance, it's bad, but that's a pretty extreme example. In most instances, these are anecdotal things that don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And you've got to reframe that in your head to say, oh, well, move it on. Just happened. So what? Forget about it. So ask yourself those two questions. Reframe it in your head. It's not going to matter in a week. Nobody cares. What's the worst that can happen? That's not that big of a deal. If it does happen, so what? So those are good ways to approach those situations. Good questions to ask yourself to reframe that narrative in your head. Next, set some boundaries and focus on your own values. What's important to you? So if someone skips a party, this is an example. Someone skips a party to focus on going to the gym because they're in the middle of a weight loss program. They're trying to improve their health. And they say, you know what? I work out every Friday night and I'm going to skip the party because I want to do that. Your friends might tease you. Your friends might razz you. So what? Who cares? You've got boundaries. It's important to you. That's what you do. That is the person that you are. And that's what you're focused on. And that's fine. If other people don't get it, so what? Who cares? Screw them. It literally doesn't matter. It's never been an issue for me to not go out. I've never been a party guy. Just even when I was young and single, that stuff just never appealed to me. So it's always important to me to be around my family, and that's what I've always done. I've either been playing a sport or working or around my family, and those are the things that are important to me. That works for me. Some people may look and say, "Well, what a nerd! You don't do anything fun. You don't do anything else." That's fine. I like what I do. I like how I have things set up, and I get a lot out of competition. So for me, sports is a great outlet, and that works for me. And I'm an outlier, so I'm like way out on the tail of the bell curve because I'm the social interaction part of things. I have a small group of people that are really important to me, and as long as I get time with that small group of people, I'm good. And it's okay to be different. That's not. I'm not saying I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm better, I'm worse. I'm just that's how I am, and I know who I am, and that's where you need to get to. Know who you are, know what's important to you, and set those boundaries so that you can focus on the things that are important to you. And if somebody else doesn't agree with you, ask yourself, does it matter? Does it matter that that person doesn't agree with you? Maybe they have a different set of values, not right, not wrong, not better, not worse, but different. And if that's important to them, good for them. I support them 100%. You go do what you want to do, and you've got my support. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, fine with me. Doesn't make a lick of difference to me. And you've got to focus on what's important to you and block out and disregard the stuff that's not important to you. So that's tip number 3. Set your own boundaries. Decide what's important to you and forget whatever anybody thinks about that because it doesn't matter. It's not their life. It's your life. You get to choose what you focus on. You get to choose what's important to you. You get to choose what you do and don't participate in. And if other people don't like it, fine. No problem. Who cares? Okay. Tip number 4, practice self-compassion. Be easy on yourself. Like you don't have to be so hard on yourself all the time. I played baseball, and so I have failed miserably in front of huge groups of people numerous times in my life. I always explain to people because people ask me, how is it that you can pick yourself up after things go wrong and you get back into the groove and keep the fight going so quickly? And so I was a pitcher when I played baseball. And so if I threw a pitch and somebody hit it 450 feet, that is instantaneous feedback that I did a bad job. Like there's no hiding from it. Everybody saw me throw the pitch. Everybody saw the other guy hit it way out of the yard, and they toss you another baseball while that guy circles the bases, and you get about 30 seconds to get ready to pitch to the next guy. And if you don't get guys out, if you don't regroup, if you don't learn from your mistakes, they literally take the ball from you and give it to somebody else, and you don't get to play anymore. So you have to learn, okay, I made a mistake. I know what happened. I know how to prevent it from happening again, or at least minimize the chances of it happening again. And it's time to go. So that was how I handled it. It was like it happens. It's a part of the job. It's not a fun part of the job, but you're gonna get hit. You're gonna give up home runs. Doesn't matter how good you are. Even the best pitchers in Major League Baseball give up about an average of a hit an inning. And so those are the best guys in the world. You're not better than them, and it happens to them. It's going to happen to you. So you have to learn how to reframe that in your mind and say, okay, so it happened. I'm not that bad. That was one thing that was always preached to us when I was playing baseball was when you're going good, don't think you're as good as things are going because the law of averages is going to catch up with you. The math will catch up to you, which means, even the best hitters in baseball fail about 7 out of 10 times. So that means you're hitting 300. So if you go through a streak of 30 at-bats where you're hitting 400 over those 30 at-bats and you know that the cap, the best you can do is 300, that means at some point during the season, you're going to have a similar streak where you hit 200. You're going to have 30 at-bats where you hit 200 because it's going to average out to 300. And so they always used to tell us, don't think you're that good when things are going good because you're not. You're getting things are going well, that's great, but it's going to change. Conversely, when things are going bad, you're not that bad. You're just having a bad stretch. You got to fight your way through it. And it's the same thing here with self-compassion. You got to tell yourself, all right, I'm better than this. I'm not performing to the level I need to perform. I'm going to redouble my efforts. I'm going to focus. I'm going to practice. I'm going to do what it takes to fight through this little tough patch and get to a better spot. But it's not fatal. It doesn't need to be, I suck. I'm never going to be good at this. I should give up, I'm a terrible person, et cetera, et cetera. You got to give yourself a little bit of grace. And so the negative self-talk in your head, you've got to learn to turn that into, I have not currently succeeded at this, but I'm going to. Instead of saying, I'm a failure, say, I have not succeeded yet, but I'm going to. For using staying on the baseball thing, a full count is when you have 3 balls and 2 strikes. So if you have a 4th ball, the batter walks, a 3rd strike, the batter is out. And so that's called the payoff pitch, because something's going to happen on that pitch. And there's a big difference between thinking, I don't want to walk this guy and I'm going to strike this guy out. They're both the same thing. The at-bat's going to end on this pitch, but having a positive approach to the at-bat, to finishing off the at-bat, is very different than, I hope I don't walk this guy, because that sows the seeds of doubt. It's negative self-talk. It's not a good way to go. So give yourself some grace, have some confidence in yourself, and fight through it. Which leads us to our 5th tip. And that one is, you got to take action despite fear. And we say a lot, the only time you can be brave is when you're afraid. Because if you're not afraid, then there is no courage. It doesn't take courage to move forward. It doesn't take courage to take the next step, because you're not afraid of the next step. The only way to be brave, the only way to show courage, is when you're afraid, is when you're worried, is when you're concerned. So there's lots of instances of this. When I got done with high school, I didn't like the offers I had to play baseball in Oregon, where I was. So I moved to California, where there was really good baseball. And there was people in my family that said, you're not going to make it. You're not good enough. They might have been right. They might have been wrong. All I knew was, I'm not going down without a fight. I'm not going down with bullets in my gun. I think I'm good enough, and I'm going to go down and try out and see if I make it. And I did. And what if I had just said, you know what? They're right. I should listen to them. They don't know, or I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not good enough. This is never going to work out. I would have missed all those experiences that have molded me into a resilient, problem-solving, gritty person that's made their way through the world. And I would have missed all of those if I didn't have the fortitude to push through it when there was unknowns, when there was fear, when there was a chance of failure, big chance of failure. Not for nothing, but there's like 125 guys that tried out, and they carry 25, and only about 20 of them dress. So that means your odds of success in that group are less than 20%. And that's not great odds. But I wasn't afraid. I took my shot. I was fortunate things worked out my way. I worked hard. I put myself in a good position to capitalize on the opportunity, but there's no guarantees in the world. If you want to start a business and everybody says you shouldn't start that business, maybe you should think about what they're saying to make sure that you've planned for every contingency, but you shouldn't let it stop you from taking action. Maybe you start the business smaller. Maybe you take shorter steps, whatever the case may be. And that's the tip here is, if you're afraid, identify one thing you can do to move forward towards a goal that you're scared of. And then do that thing no matter what. Say, no matter what, by noon tomorrow, I'm going to call the bank, or I am going to call the state commission for whatever work or job that you're into, or I'm going to call a business consultant and ask questions. Whatever it is you're afraid of, identify one small step that you can do and take that step. Set yourself a deadline and say, I don't care what happens, by this day and this time, this action is going to be complete. So that's a way to get past the fear. Action is the only cure for fear. Compete is a verb. If you're going to compete, you got to take steps. You got to take action. And so when we talk about being brave, the only time you can be brave is when you're afraid. And it's important to push through those instances. You might fail. Even if you fail, learn from that. Apply those learnings to the next step you take. You're better educated. You've got more experience. You have real life experience to draw from to help you increase your chances of success the next time you try something, which should be soon. This is the old, if you get bucked off the horse, get right back on and keep riding, because it's the best way. We talk about basketball too. So if you're a shooter and you're in a shooting slump, what's the only way to get out of a shooting slump? Keep shooting. The only way to get out of it is to start making shots. The only way to make shots is to take them. So you can't run from what your problem is. You've got to take action and confront what your problem is. It's like hitting. The only way to start hitting is to keep hitting, keep going up to the plate and taking your cuts. There's no way around it. You've got to take your shots. So that's how to get past that fear and take action. You just got to force yourself Take one small step, then another small step. Pretty soon you'll hit a groove. You'll feel better about what you got going on. You'll develop confidence, and it'll help you keep moving towards the goal that you're trying to achieve. So that's it for today, guys. Those are our 5 steps, 5 tips to stop worrying what other people think. You've got to own your life. You've got to make your own decisions. Don't ignore all negative feedback. Go back and watch our episode about how to filter negative feedback so you can get the information that you need to improve yourself, but don't let it stop you. You can't let fear or what other people think guide how you go through the world. It's a recipe for disaster, and you're not going to be happy if you're trying to make other people happy. You got to make yourself happy. You got to do good things, make the world a better place, but you've got to do that in a way that makes you feel good. And that's the whole point of the episode. So James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all our social media accounts there, and we publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on our channel on whatever platform you consume it on. Would love to hear from you real-world examples of when you have felt judged or you've been worried about being judged and the steps you took to overcome it, or the experiences you had where you did overcome it, or even if it didn't work out and you failed. How did you get past that? How did you learn from it? How did you compartmentalize that and take those learnings and apply them to future steps in your life? Would love to hear that stuff in the comments, guys. It would help everybody that's watching. So that's it for today. Everybody have a great week. Love having you on the channel. Hope to see you next time, and we'll see you then.